This is a story called The Time Game, Part 2, by Accomplished Oil 611, under the subreddit HFY. Okay, recap. So I've done some stupid stuff. I went on a hike. Stupid, I know. I found a doorway that appeared out of nowhere, and wasn't even oriented upright, kind of like a bottomless pit. Who the hell just jumps into a bottomless pit? That's right, this guy. That's stupid number 2. So the pit turned out to be a game, and the game turned out to be deadly. Now I'm finding myself 300 million years in the past, give or take, and looking down the barrel of a gun. Okay, not a gun. It is, in point of fact, the single most crazy natural disaster I think I've ever heard of, and I've got a front row seat. So it's pretty clear that I'm about to be dropped into the middle of madness and forced to find my way through this maze of death, all to win the prize. The prize I chose is to get my mind back when I'm done, which I'm quite certain would otherwise be scarred for life thanks to this adventure. I did this instead of asking for money or fame or power. This completes the trifecta of stupidity that got me here. So now I'm just waiting for the path I got to take to get myself home. This is probably going to suck something awful. The audience has chosen. Your path stands before you. Good luck, contestant. 100. 99. 98. Okay, I'm not proud to say that it took me until a count of 50 to actually ingest what the game host had actually said. Now, knowing I had about 45 seconds left, I frantically looked for the path I needed to follow. And there it was. Just below me, about a quarter mile away, stood a doorway to a portal. That's not too bad. I mean, I'm not a sprinter, but with a mountain-sized gun pointing at my head, I certainly could run a quarter mile. 10. 9. I braced myself for the mad dash. This is when I noticed yet another door beyond that one. Way beyond. No way I can run that far. Fuck it, I'm going for the close one. 3, 2, 1. At that moment, I noticed 2 things. 1, a forceful wind was telling me I was now falling fast towards the ground. 2, time was ticking forward. Below me was a jungle, and I quickly realized that I wasn't going to be miraculously slowed down from any magical invisible force. Thankfully, I had all sorts of tree limbs to break my fall, as I ended up landing in some rather deep mud. I got up, checking for broken bones, and began to wade through the mud to what appeared to be shoreline, when I noticed a few more things. First, the ground was shaking. No surprise there. Second, a huge number of birds had just taken to the air above me, which was a bit disquieting. Lastly, I was wading through mud, thinking about items 1 and 2 instead of running like hell. Time to pick up the pace. I'm not going to say that it was a good idea to hike in jeans and a long shirt. No, it was an absolutely brilliant idea to do it. The moment I hit stable dry land, I shed my clothes along with a burdensome amount of mud. The shaking was clearly getting worse, but you know what? I really didn't notice. My mind was on the 8-inch long leech attached to my arm. The leech, detecting that I was attempting to remove it from its delicious snack, bit down hard. Ouch, I said using lots of colorful language as I tore the leech from my arm. I took a moment to mourn the missing patch of skin that the leech took with it. Then I frantically checked the rest of my body, starting well, you know where. Thank God for jeans and long shirts. No more leeches. So I was now totally disoriented. To hell with it. I knew the same thing the birds did. Staying put was a death sentence, so I made a break for it. I ran hard in what might have been the right direction. I got about 15 feet before my vision fell on a bug. At that moment, it became quite clear to me that it wasn't just the leeches I needed to worry about. Unfortunately, I became fixated on that particular bug and proceeded to run directly into a termite nest, which immediately fell over upon me plowing into it. From a distance, what happened next might remind you of fire ants in a flood zone. Being right on top of it, I can assure you that it was more akin to a zombie apocalypse. The snappy biters poured out of the ground, and these things were big. If you've ever seen a picture of a murder hornet, attach that name to something the size of a hummingbird with pinchers you'd buy from Home Depot. Excellent. Now pretend that about 1 million of them are chasing you through the jungle. I circumnavigated the mound, giving it a wide berth, and stumbled through a clearing. It was here that I saw about 12 other nests, all erupting with insects. It was immediately clear to me that these things were likely chanting, "Death to Tim," as they coordinated my demise. I didn't panic. I could outrun them. It was at this point that I learned they could fly. It may have also run through my head that I was nearly naked. Good times. Fortunately for me, you might say, the volcano chose this time to express its agitation at all the shaking. Hot steam began to shoot out of whatever small crack in the ground that it could find. This included the nests of the million fiery murder birds that were trying to kill me. As I prepared to run like hell, I made a promise to myself. If I ever get out of here alive, I'm immediately calling Terminex to get that sweet revenge. The clearing held more than just terror. It also carried hope. The area vaguely matched the ever-fading map slipping out of my porous memory. I breathed some sigh of relief in knowing that I was probably going the right way. Of course, in doing so, I began to choke on the smell of sulfur. Without a second thought, I went for it. My hands were swinging in all directions, trying to swat away the flying bugs as I ran through the clearing. My running slowed when I felt my feet stumble as the ground below me began to break apart. I didn't look back, but I did feel that it had gotten a great deal warmer as I took the shortest possible path to my freedom. Rock pushed up under my feet so violently that it pushed me forward by literal leaps and bounds. Getting to the opposite end of the clearing, I took a moment to look back and was instantly reminded of why they say that is a bad idea. You know how you're told not to look down if you're afraid of heights? Well, the euphoria of feeling like you're about to die comes with a momentary onset of paralysis. I did not know this. However, when I saw what was shooting out of the ground, my legs felt like jelly. The ground seemed to unzip as liquid rock spilled out onto it and, more or less, began rapidly flowing towards me. It was the heat that got my heart racing fast enough to overcome the paralysis. As I turned away, one of those giant bugs flew past me on fire. It was literally screaming. Not a bad idea, I thought. Far in front of me, I saw geysers of hot rock begin shooting into the air. Am I seriously running towards that? I knew this place was about to become a lot more unpleasant, but I didn't know what to do. It didn't seem appropriate for the game to kill me off so quickly, so I looked around, and I saw it. Just ahead, there were rocks. I mean, of course, there were. It was a mountain, but the rocks I saw were almost out of place. The massive stair-like pillars appeared to create a path and be spaced just far enough apart to make for some really gnarly excitement. Moreover, they were big and would create some distance between me and the rapidly approaching inferno. I sprinted to the first one and didn't know I'd reached it just in time until I saw my boot was on fire. Below me, liquid rock had covered the ground like a flood. I scampered up the rock and stomped out the flame. In case you didn't know, lava is 2,000 degrees. It was about to become very uncomfortable where I was perched. So I did what heroes do. I saved my ass. I leaped for the next rock, and the next, and hey, was this parkour? Hell yes, it was. I used every ounce of my American Ninja Warrior observation skills to imitate exactly what I expected someone who knew what they were doing would, in fact, do. I had done this once before on a snowboard. In that case, I was bombing down the hill. Of course I didn't know how to turn, so I faked it. I shifted my weight rapidly to do the back and forth slalom skiing that I saw in the X Games. It worked too. For about 2 minutes. Then I wished I'd worn a helmet. In this case, I didn't think a helmet would matter. Thankfully, when your lives are on the line, sometimes you can surprise yourself. This was one of those moments. As I bounced back and forth between large rocks to climb the latest enormous boulder, my mind drifted to Mario running over those pits of fire. The little death jingle rang in my mind. It is weird that I thought more about that stupid song getting stuck in my head rather than slipping and falling to my death. I almost lost it on the next boulder. As I jumped to an outcropping, the whole damn boulder split in half. The part I clung to started to tilt, and I knew it was going to disappear into what was now an ocean of hot rock well below me. I scrambled up it and dove for its better half as though it was home plate. I scored that run. The remaining boulders began to look more like monoliths, and I wondered how they weren't simply toppling over amidst the shaking. I pushed on anyway. I had enough faith in my video game knowledge to know that there had to be something at the end of all this. However, reaching the top boulder, I suddenly realized that there was nowhere left to go. Damn you, real life. Looking far out in the distance, I saw an enormous mountain being pushed by some terrible, invisible, tectonic force. The noise was deafening as it scraped over the top of the ongoing volcanic eruption. Yet here I stood, on a high pillar above the lake of fire. I began to feel the pillar start to shift under me. It was then that I realized that I didn't actually have a plan. I looked back to where I came from. Behind me, the sky was gone. In its place was a wall of boiling black ash. Shining through it was a crimson-red color that I wasn't too fond of either. When the main thrust of the dark cloud was upwards, it began to spill over itself like a wave. Definitely not the size you surf, though. All around it, volcanic lightning crashed, but you couldn't actually hear it. Instead, my head was filled with the sound of enormous rumbling, shattering rock, and of course that stupid Mario Brothers death jingle. Instinctively, I backed away from the cloud and proceeded to fall off the rock pedestal. Now, it is luck that I fell into one of those voodoo black hole Twilight Zone portal doors. Maybe. Okay, yes. Had I looked down instead of out, I would have seen a door just waiting for me. I didn't, and that's okay. I gotta say, noticing that I was still alive and not getting cooked in that furnace honestly made me feel pretty happy. Of course, the happiness abruptly ended when I landed hard on a rock. Rubbing my butt as I got up, I looked at where I was. I'd been transported, nearly instantly, to the mountain I'd seen in the distance. It turned out that I was on a stone slab overlooking the volcano where I'd almost died. Knowing this did not give me the warm fuzzies. As it was, I was situated at the base of the shovel end of a rock that was plowing its way towards the position from whence I came. I turned to run and was immediately stopped. Hello, cliff. The cliff was massive. Fortunately, I wasn't expert enough at rock climbing to say if it could, in fact, be surmounted. It was at this point that a few realizations pushed their way into my head. First, the ground was shaky as all hell. The kind of shaky where, if you bothered to check the emergency phone message, it would say, forget the doorway and get the fuck out of the house. However, the shaking was secondary in my mind to the debris. Rock was dislodging from the cliff and falling everywhere. Additionally, lava bombs were coming up from behind me and smashing into the cliff wall. Well, at least it's not raining. Okay, time for some irrational thoughts to convince myself that this isn't suicide. Let's see. I'm the main character in a game, and it appears that I've reached level 2. This is some fucked up version of Donkey Kong, where there's no ladders, and the gorilla's throwing rocks, and Godzilla is coming up behind me. I totally got this. I was not scared of heights until I looked up. It was then that I knew that scaling tall walls of immense danger was not for me. Still, what's a guy to do? The handhold started pretty easy. It only took a couple minutes to reach a narrow slab that acted like a perch. However, the path up from there was entirely smooth for another 15 feet. I realized I'd climbed 10 feet just to get stuck. Then I saw it. If I ran across the path, I could jump and grab another slab that was sticking out a few inches. I didn't have to jump far. The problem was that below that portion of cliff, there was nothing but a 1,000-foot drop. Oh well, glory awaits. Yes! I am amazing. I mean, of course I made it. There really wasn't any doubt. I climbed up that side, which was when I started to notice a trend. The first several back and forths were pretty smooth. The shaking subsided at just the right times. The boulders falling from the sky seemed to fall somewhere else, and the lava bombs didn't land anywhere important. Then I noticed the problem. I was going way too slow. I hadn't covered 1/10 of the cliff, and I was more than halfway to Valhalla if I stayed on this perch. Time to cut corners, but first a change in tune. I needed a theme song. Mission Impossible. Time to show the haters. I gotta say, once again, I was good. I spent most of the time humming the theme, and very intentionally not looking down as I climbed the wall with reckless abandon. I'm not going to say that I did all the cliffhanger moves you'd see in the movies, because, well, heroes don't brag. It was at a point near the top where I noticed that the boot that caught fire earlier was now really falling apart. I probably shouldn't say I noticed it. I didn't actually look down. I did, however, feel each and every pebble as they tore through my boot. It didn't help when a handhold gave way and I came down hard on my foot, stubbing my toe in the process. With the help of a great deal of cursing, I did, of course, finally reach the top. Honestly, I wasn't a moment too soon. As I tossed myself over the final ledge, the heat on my back began to remind me of the danger below. I thought I might be on fire as I lunged to safety. Damn it, my toe hurts. Actually, my whole foot, but I wasn't prepared to recognize that yet. First, I had to focus on the toe. Unfortunately, the foot never got the loving care it deserved. Instead, I got to run some more, as I found that the top, upon which I was perched, was about to no longer be the top after all. It was fracturing like slate, and large pieces were dislodging and sliding sharply down the cliffside. Seeing this, I began to run away from the crumbling ledge. This apparently infuriated the cliff, which clearly wanted me dead. Doubling its efforts, more rock began to dislodge and slide away with me standing on top of it. In front of me, I could see the rock shattering. As the earthquake got dialed up to 11, it was either luck or my extraordinary video game skills that got me past the initial rock slides. I would have continued to run. The problem was that in front of me, I saw one of the cave-like structures I'd seen on my epic journey to this joyful place. This was one of those caves that's about to inundate the region with fire and death. This forced me to run parallel to the shattering rock as it prepared to slide into the abyss. It was a good call, though. Not a moment after I'd made the turn, the cave began to glow. An instant later, and the place I'd been standing was fire, hosed with a spray of boiling rock. I had dodged the river, but there was more to come. I began to notice that as I ran, I once again didn't know where I was running to. I did know that as I moved, the ground beneath me began to physically rotate as it crumbled and pushed into the volcano. I had thought that I'd been running uphill, but it turns out that uphill was rapidly becoming downhill. The entire mountain range was being lifted by a volcano, erupting with the ferocity that could only result from its caldera being squeezed and crushed with titanic forces. I suddenly knew where I needed to be. There was only one safe place. Okay, I'm exaggerating here. That place is as fucked as every other place, but that place, it had to have a doorway. I mean, if I was an audience member, that's where I'd put the damn door. So yeah, I needed to go back. I needed to dance with that cliff as the mountain rose up, until the cliffside became a new perch. Time to dance with the devil. I've been a little loose with my words. Earlier I'd said I was running this way and that. Turns out, I am as tired as a tombstone. This didn't mean I wanted to be under one. However, my legs felt like jelly as I maneuvered across a rapidly deteriorating cliff ledge. The lava river that had been pouring down the cliffside was beginning to turn towards me, but that was a lot less concerning to me than the lava bombs, which had picked up both in intensity and magnitude. That, coupled with the cliff, which was still crumbling beneath me, captured most of my attention. The slope was now nearing 45 degrees on either side of the ledge. A lava bomb was coming to meet me, so I made the decision to take my chances with a crumbling ledge. I heaved myself over the cliff like Superman. I figured gravity would be a better bet than my legs at the moment. When I woke up, my other shoe was on fire. I pretty quickly deduced a few things. First, I rolled down about a third of the cliff that I climbed up earlier. I'm not sure if the cliffside had leveled out enough to stop my fall, or if I'd somehow caught my foot. Probably both. It didn't matter. I hit my head in the process and passed out. Waking up wasn't pleasant. Remember that lava river I dodged earlier? Well, that was now my primary concern. My boot was the only thing that kept my foot from third-degree burns as boiling rock began filtering through the shattered rock all around me. I almost panicked as I worked to dislodge my foot, but it's weird how you find that strength when it's all on the line. The cliffside was now the perch, and I needed to find the doorway. Every step was a risk. It wasn't just the boiling rock coming up through the innumerable fractured cracks. It was also the rock itself, which felt porous underfoot, like walking on sandstone that could collapse in an instant. I took a moment to think and decided it was underrated. I ran for the cliff's edge, but it wasn't happening. It was too far, and the entire region was pooled with a lake of hot rock. God, how long had I been unconscious? I looked back to the other way, and it wasn't looking much better. I looked down and saw steam beginning to rise through the porous rock face. I'd long since burned out my sense of smell, but I knew the sulfur was thick in the air. This is it, I thought. I looked up. There it was. The door was almost directly above me. The only thing separating me from it was about 8 feet. I moved to get a better view, and it moved with me. Holy shit. I could feel the energy beneath my feet as the soles of my boots began to melt. I had one chance. 20 yards away stood a lava bomb that had coagulated on the side of the cliff. I ran for it. I could feel the entire mountain begin to break up beneath my feet as the megaton-level force of the volcano began to shatter it. I lunged up a pile of semi-molten rock. I felt a pull on my boot as I went for step 2. The sole had ripped clean off. As I stepped down again, it was with only a small amount of fabric separating the rock from my skin. Ouch. I made it. It's hard to explain how you can jump up into a doorway and immediately fly out of it into a full face of dirt. But that's how I found myself. I was in a jungle. There were vines stringing down from enormous trees. In the distance, through a clearing, I saw a volcanic pillar begin to tumble. It might have been beautiful if it wasn't tumbling in my direction. Are you kidding me? I got up to run, but I had issues. My foot was seriously burned, and even if it wasn't, I didn't have any kind of boot left to run with. I was about to give up. Time to wait and die. Then I saw it. A fucking T-Rex. Now, the T-Rex wasn't exactly paying attention to me at the moment. It, like every other thinking being, was looking at the distant spectacle, which was about to become much more intimate. I figured I had about 3 minutes before it and everything else realized the enormous peril they were in. Using my time wisely, I grabbed hold of a nearby tree and began to climb. I needed 30 feet, and I got it, just as an enormous concussive boom split the forest. The sound was deafening. It caused animals everywhere to run in pure terror. That T-Rex ran right over my head as I Tarzaned down onto its back. Did I yell out that Tarzan call? No. Are you fucking nuts? I grabbed the back of that beast for dear life, and I'm pretty sure it didn't even notice. It was then that I realized that I must have the blood of a Targaryen. Long ago, I rode a horse which didn't listen to a word I said. I commanded it, I swore at it, I kicked at its sides, and it didn't matter. That horse had its own issues and couldn't be bothered. It had something else on its mind, and that was it. This was exactly nothing like that. It was, however, very much like a bull riding competition I saw once. As I clung to the T-Rex's back, I hoped it wouldn't buck me off and jump on my nuts before trying to gore me like that poor cowboy I remember seeing. The T-Rex wasn't exactly fighting me. It was, however, doing a pretty decent job bumping me around as it tried to put distance between itself and the rapidly approaching cloud of deadly gas and rock. As it crashed through the jungle, I ever so quietly hummed The Flight of the Valkyrie. It felt appropriate. I was about to wonder when the T-Rex might get sick of carrying a hitchhiker and take matters into its own precious little baby T-Rex claws. It turned out that I didn't have to wait at all. The T-Rex stopped abruptly, and I sort of flew over the handlebars, so to speak. I thought, awesome, I've always wanted to fight a T-Rex. The issue was that I didn't stop falling. The jungle fell away behind me as I plunged over a cliff. I didn't land on any piles of leaves or on a giant pillow. I did, however, belly flop into a fast-moving river. I knew how to swim, but the river was carved into the land, with cliffs on both sides. Looking back, I was astonished that I survived the fall. Survived is a broad statement, of course. I did still feel like a bull stomped on my nuts. Deciding to swim downstream was an obvious choice. Deciding to swim off a waterfall was not. I'd like to say that the first waterfall was fun, but the second was not. The third would kill me, so I swam like hell back towards the base of the second waterfall. I could actually hear the energy of the mountain rushing in from above me. Recognizing that this was it, I swam hard for the sloping shoreline. Thankfully, it was just wide enough to crawl over. Debris started to fall as I edged towards the cliff. The big stuff began to hit as I put my back to the cliff and edged my way behind the waterfall. Hell came raining down as I tucked away into the rock shelter behind the waterfall. This was when I found the cave. Crawling inside, a huge bug tried to get me. This may have been an assumption, but it raised my adrenaline just enough to acquire the energy to smash it with my one good shoe. Then I passed out. When I awoke, the cave was pitch black. I knew what had happened. A lahar had formed and come down the river carrying half the jungle with it. It had buried me alive. So, this was it. I immediately feared the many other big ugly bugs that might be buried with me. Then I thought a few quick stings might be better than starving to death. Finally, I just got bored of thinking and decided to feel around the cave wall. I stumbled on a rock, fell, and landed on a padded floor. This could have been worse. Recognizing that I'd fallen through a portal, I sat up. The room was well lit, and next to me were 6 men. 6 men that looked exactly like me. I don't mean ridden hard and put away wet. I mean twins, doppelgangers, 6 other versions of me. Seriously? What the fuck? That was part 2 of The Time Game by Accomplished Oil 611 under the subreddit HFY. Thank you so much for listening, and we hope to see you next time.